saying picking up on what you heard from Microsoft's Dave this morning, he told you that he was previously a management consultant. Well, I can do one better. I used to be a management consultant, and now I'm in the finance industry, so I get an awful lot of stick for both of those things. What I'm going to talk about here, if this works, in the next few minutes, is to talk about and share some of the experiences that we've had as a big insurance company in Asia, dealing with some of the rapid changes in technology generally and AI specifically over the past few years, and particularly in the past few months, and how we're trying to pivot ourselves to take this pretty seriously and use it to challenge pretty much everything that we do as a company and as an industry, I would suggest. So, being an insurance guy, I've got to start with a glass half empty view of the world. This makes reference to a hedge fund called 36 South, who wrote a really good paper, actually, quite recently, talking about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, all of which are coming together to define our futures in a not too pretty outcome. Aging, particularly the aging of the baby boomer generation, more people getting older, more people in retirement, fewer people working, and the government's needing to fund that huge shift in demographics from a working population and a tax base into a shrinking tax base and an aging population. That's happening not just in the Western world, that's happening in major markets like China, like Japan, and a significant portion of the global population will be going through that. Tech, of course, I'll come back to, and that's the focus for the next few minutes. Labor, and specifically the global movement of labor, and the fact that more and more jobs can be done anywhere in the world. No longer do people need to be next to the person they're serving or next to the person they're working with, and that's creating enormous strains, positive opportunities for companies from a cost perspective, but enormous strains for individuals who are part of the labor force. And then last but not least, a really big one that we spend a lot of time thinking about is government debt and the explosion of government debt since the financial crisis. And what that's doing is bringing demand forward. So all of that money that's been pumped into the system through quantitative easing and so forth has really brought demand forward. So if you add up these four things, then whether it's a car crash or a hard landing, but the world is going to get a lot tougher. And so things like tech innovation can actually help to smooth that. So where we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, this is an earlier one. As mentioned in the Davos, I won't dwell on this because it's been covered in depth this morning. But we're now very much in the fourth. I like this slide because it's kind of gory, gets people's attention before lunch. But it needn't be cyber systems in terms of robotics and physical movement. It can be in terms of the learning that we're seeing as well. And in fact, this is where we get very interested. Again, not in the robotics side, but in the fact that machines are learning. They are making decisions based on experience versus just simple rules. They're learning from their mistakes, and machines are starting to think. So I'll just lob out one controversial comment, which is a personal view. The whole theme of this summit around artificial intelligence. I just checked this morning on the global oracle of the truth, Google search, to find a definition of intelligence, and a definition was the acquisition or the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. No reference to humans in there, the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. That's what machines are now doing. It's not artificial at all, it's real. And I think as we're seeing, and I'll show you a couple of examples, we're seeing cases, as you just heard from a previous speaker, where machines are actually doing a better job, a more consistent job, a more reliable job, and a more compliant job than humans of making some decisions, certainly in our business, and that's going to be, I think, more and more true in our future. So we heard different stats this morning, 40%, 50%, 60% impact on jobs. That's not all bad. Not all jobs will disappear, but they'll all change. That's been the case throughout eternity, and I think AI, or machine learning, machine thinking, as I would describe it, is going to change the nature of jobs, maybe fewer jobs, which may not be a problem given that labor market shift and the aging of the populations in many places, but it will force people to step up and do different things and work with machines rather than just use them as tools. Very importantly, though, big stress on government, because the government is the funder of a lot of the mess that the changes this apocalyptic view may create. And if the governments are there to provide social support for individuals, for families, then it's going to be ever harder for them to do that as these dynamics change. So big pressure on governments, which is why, in the public sector sense, these changes that we're seeing are very, very important. We've heard a number of references this morning to Moore's Law, very well publicized. I'm going to share with you now a video that we put together for our own people to explain to them how some of these kind of scary changes out there in the world are going to be impacting our business and why they need to pay attention. There are 3 laws here that we're concerned about, and it's the confluence of all of those that really defines the AI space that we're now talking about. Let me just share the video, which was an internal video we put together for our staff to explain some of this evolution over time.
Technical progress is at the heart of modern innovation, from big and complex data centers to that simple search bar on our phones. 3 fundamental laws drive this technical progress, and understanding them will help us innovate more effectively, whether we aim to improve customer experience or provide better solutions. First is Metcalfe's Law, which demonstrates that the value of a network rises exponentially as more people get connected. So this means that when we go from 2 phones in a system to 20, we don't make it 10 times more powerful, we make it 100 times more powerful. And now, with social media, it's even easier to build a larger network of agents, customers, and prospects than ever before. The second is Moore's Law, which describes how computing power doubles every couple of years. That explains why an iPhone today can process much more information than many supercomputers from the 80s. Third is Kreider's Law, which explains that our ability to create and store information is growing even faster than our ability to process it. Over the last decade, we can put in 1,000 times more information into a USB stick at 1/10 of the price tag. With these 3 laws in place, the smartphone that fits inside your jeans pocket has 1,300 times the processing power and 16 million times the data storage space than the same NASA guidance computer used during the Apollo moon missions. What's more, your smartphone can connect you to around 2 billion people worldwide. All these at a fraction of the cost. Imagine all the ways we can enhance our business. With all the information sources we have at our disposal, combined with machine intelligence, we'll have new technologies such as cognitive computing that can make our agents 5 to 10 times more impactful. For innovation to flourish, let's look at possibilities, connect with more people, and enable holistic outcomes to make tomorrow's news yesterday.
All right, so the message we were trying to get to was this is all happening, it's all happening at once, and it is going to impact our business, and I'll come back to how in a second. We started with tools, AI tools that were designed to make our lives easier as employees. We're using them much more now in prediction, and then we've heard a lot mentioned already around Jeopardy this morning, around the cognitive side too. And here is Jeopardy, and all I'll say about that is that it was a game show, but a 4-year-old beat the best in the world at a game, which is, we've seen since, as we heard already this morning again, around Go more recently. But big changes, but it isn't just a game. And here's a little commercial break for you. I know the Watson guys are talking after lunch, but this again, what I'm going to show you now is a real example of the application of Watson that makes a big difference to what we're doing in the health space particularly.
Dr. Mark Norton, a clinical oncologist, is preparing to see a patient. He logs into the electronic medical record, and instead of spending time trying to find relevant information, he uses the IBM Watson Oncology Diagnosis and Treatment Advisor. He pushes the Ask Watson button, and Watson analyzes the patient data against tens of thousands of documents from its vast body of medical literature. Dr. Norton starts with the Case Information tab, where Watson has pulled out the relevant information, as well as suggestions for additional information to gather. Moving to the Test Options tab, he sees tests that Watson suggests that he consider ordering. He presses the Evidence button to see the reasons why Watson suggested the first test. Then he drills down further into a specific reference that supports the suggestion. Once the results of the tests come in, Dr. Norton presses the Treatment Options tab to see a panel of suggested confidence-scored treatments. He also sees a list of clinical trials to consider. Again, He reviews the supporting documentation by pushing the Evidence button. Dr. Norton has new information to add to the case, so he pushes the blue Watson avatar on the bottom and speaks directly into the microphone. He makes sure that his words have been transcribed correctly and submits the new information. Watson returns a revised set of confidence-scored treatment suggestions that take the new information into account. It also updates the list of clinical trials to consider. Shifting gears from Dr. Gordon's role to that of a hospital or health plan administrator, the advisor provides a customizable dashboard showing key performance indicators like where the advisor is being used, how it's performing, and what information sources are most useful. The administrator can drill down into the data more specifically to get more details, such as performance over different time spans, metrics on specific types of cancer, or in this case, a narrower geographic area. This is just one of the many areas that Watson's cognitive capabilities can be applied to help people live and work in better ways.
Okay, so again, that's a real-world example. We're seeing this kind of idea being explored and invested in a lot in our part of the world, in part because of cost, but actually more certainly in emerging Asia because of lack of capability in humans to do this work. And I'll share an example in a second of where that's very, very real for us right now. We are seeing a generational shift within the space of AI away from what you might call industrial productivity, using it to become better and more efficient at what we do and saving money along the way, towards consumer productivity. Each one of us, by virtue of having a mobile phone, is already using a smartphone, is already using AI day to day, whether we're searching Google Pictures, for example, is using intelligent tools to sharpen decision making and do work which in the past would have had to been done by us as individuals. Not always perfectly yet, but that's the learning process underway. So we're all using these tools day to day. This is not some science. And we're also seeing a shift, or an expansion perhaps, away from convergent AI, which is loading in loads and loads and loads of data from different sources and using pattern recognition and image recognition, for example, to form informed decision making. That will still be valid, but we're also seeing what we would call emergent AI, whereby machines, be they small, large, mobile or not, are starting to think for themselves. It sounds very hi-fi and sci-fi and out there in the future, but it's happening on a small scale already, and we think this is going to be an area where we're particularly interested. So what does all that mean for insurance? Insurance in many ways has always been a digital business. We've always, as an industry, been crunching vast amounts of information. That goes back 100 years. We've done it with a lot of slide rules and log tables in the past. We're able to use modern tools to do it now. But we've always been a very data-hungry business, and we've always used a lot of complex jargon. But when it boils down to it, we like to think of the world in four simple experiences that customers have. When you look at it from a customer perspective, not from a company perspective. Customers want to learn about insurance. What is it? This is true, by the way, of all types of insurance. What is it? What does it do for me? Why is it relevant? Why would I spend money for something I hope doesn't happen, whether it's death or disease or illness? They want to buy insurance, however they do that, whether it's interacting with an individual or online or whatever. They need to manage their policy over its life, and they need to make a claim. Unless, of course, it's a traditional life policy in which they're never around to make the claim because they're dead. But their family and their estate will do so. So let's just look at how we think we see AI as impacting these four basic areas across the industry. We've heard reference this morning to robo-advisors. That is a really bad misnomer. These are not robots, as the photograph would suggest. They're tools which are helping our real agents become better, smarter, quicker at giving advice. And importantly for us, from a compliance perspective, also providing an audit trail as to why a decision was made or a recommendation was made. When a human does that, quite often they don't go through all the documentation steps to record why they got to a certain piece of advice, which in the financial advisor industry these days is a big deal. With AI tools, we can code those and design those to track the logic behind a given recommendation, whether that was right or not, and that provides a flow that we can share with audit and compliance. Behind the scenes, post the learning and buying, there's massive impact going to happen on our core back office, if you will. We use people called underwriters and actuaries in great numbers across our business and across our industry. Underwriters essentially there to evaluate the risk, to assess the risk, whether it's of an individual, an airliner, a ship, whatever it may be. They're assessing whether that risk is worth taking, and if so, what conditions to apply to the risk. Actuaries, on the other hand, price that risk. And then once the policy is live, they then use that information to manage the risk. Both those teams of people are making experience-based, judgment-based decisions based on a lot of data, but also a lot of experience on a repeated basis over time. And that's exactly what computers do, and it's exactly where AI is massively expanding our ability to make those kind of informed, learned decisions and to iterate and refine as we go. So I think both these industries, both these activities, as we heard earlier, are going to be transformed by the emergence of AI. Not replicated completely. There'll always be a role for human underwriters, human actuaries, but they'll be doing higher value-added work, and I would submit that there'll be far, far fewer of them than there are today, back to the 40% statistic we saw earlier. So in our back office, AI is going to have a big impact, as well as in our front office. And of course, at the customer level as well, whether it's chatbots, people interacting online with their service provider, as we saw this morning from RBS, not with a human necessarily, but with some form of intelligent machine that is responding to their needs and knows when to escalate to a human over time. So many ways in which the customer experience will be changed as a result of this, as well as our back office. And then last but not least, probably the most profound impact for our industry will be the impact of artificial intelligence and deep learning, particularly on the claims process and the diagnosis of health issues particularly. We're a life and health insurer. We run a series of accelerator programs across Asia for digital health startup companies. And one of those companies, just to give you one example, small business today, they just come through our 3-month accelerator program. A company's called MedRhythm, founded by an ex-Google DeepMind person and a person from Kaggle, the data analytics and visualization company. And within a couple of weeks, having decided what to do, they've managed to design an AI algorithm that replicates with human accuracy diagnosis of radiology x-rays. So they've done that, and they've done that for a very small, specific medical state, but they're now expanding that to talk about, to use much more information and to look all across the human body. And what we're finding, and what they're finding from that, is that very quickly they can draw huge amounts of information, and they can find issues and blemishes on x-rays that humans can't spot. They can query those, and actually they can use that to give better, more consistent advice with that audit trail than a human radiologist can do. So given that this process today takes a lot of time, it's about 1 hour, 30 minutes to get the x-ray, 30 minutes to process it, and then some of a radiologist's time to look at it when they're busy doing other things, that can come down to seconds with this technology. And all the time, those algorithms are learning themselves and being refined and improving. So things like medical diagnosis will deliver a huge impact to customers, to the providers, and to ourselves as insurers as well. So what should we do about this? The temptation is to get nervous and assess the disruption and worry about the fact that things are going to be shrunk. The opportunity, though, of course, is the opposite, which is to accept this is happening, to embrace it as an organization rather than resist it, and to figure out ways in which we can apply these fast-developing technologies in our business for the benefit of customers as well as for ourselves. So this is already happening. We're seeing it on the edges of our business today, but it's moving incredibly quickly. Some people will be left behind. That's inevitable with these things. There will be a change in the competitive makeup. We're determined that we're not in that camp, of course, but there's a huge opportunity through using these technologies to help our customers live better, healthier, and longer lives. And this is an industry opportunity to try and shift an industry from what historically has been very much focused on loss and managing that to an industry that's truly focused on life. So we strongly believe AI has an enormous potential across all aspects of our business, the back, the middle, the front, and the customer experience, for the positive but with a lot of disruption along the way, and that's very much what we're focused on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Simeon. Let's take a question or
Sure.
two, if there is any from the audience. Yes, right here from Will Venters from the London School of Economics. It's my alma mater, so really happy to have you here.
Yeah, mine too.
Right.
Thank you. You gave an incredibly rosy picture, but I just wanted to poke you a little bit because insurance is pooled risk. And one of my personal concerns is that pooled risk works on the basis that there is some lack of understanding of the risk that we have, and therefore we can pool it. But Watson and the medical diagnosis systems that you talked about at the end offer a huge opportunity for insurers to eject me from insurance on the basis of something that I don't know, and I end up with a large number of people without necessary insurance because of their risk, which doesn't mean that's not the pooled risk that insurance works on, but is a much more profitable model for an insurance market. So I just wondered if you'd like to comment on that.
Great question, Will. And it is more profitable for the first couple of years until your reputation collapses. Because insurance, more than just most other industries, is all based on trust. Because most of our contracts, if you're writing a life insurance contract, that's a 50, 60, 70-year contract. And you have to believe as an individual that company is going to be A, around at that time and not bust and solvent, and B, it's going to pay the claim. So the minute, it touches on a lot of ethical issues, but the minute that any insurer starts to select against customers based on their medical history, based on other factors beyond what they disclose at the point of application, then that insurance reputation is toast. So it's something we all need to be very careful of. It links also with data protection and the need to treat customers' health data particularly even more sensitively than, say, credit card information. It's one thing to lose money when someone steals your credit card. It's another to have your very confidential health information out there and your family's health information in the public domain. That would be beyond the pale. So it's a very sensitive area. I think the opportunity, though, is to take that broader set of information, use it to design products and services which perhaps are more appropriate to a certain subset rather than trying to serve everyone at once, but not take it to the extreme where we can start to select against people based on their individual characteristics. It's worth also one more point, and because I do get that question a lot. Yes, the medical data and the massive the increasing amounts of information that you have around yourself, even with respect to, say, the genome that we made reference to earlier, that all goes so far. You may know that you have a high propensity for a given form of cancer or not, but you can still walk out in the street and get hit by a bus. And so as long as that risk happens, then it's not only about your propensity for illness, it's also about the fact that just, excuse my language, but shit happens in real life, and you need to protect against that as well. But important ethical questions are raised by all of this.
Thank you very much, Simeon. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.